So it is week number 1 of the college football slate. We have got pretty much every single FBS team playing this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we got a game on Monday. And today we are going to be predicting every single game on the docket for week number 1 for the college football season. Now again, we are going to be doing this every single week all the way until the national championship game, and I'm going to be doing this as well with the NFL season, so make sure to hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss our predictions every single week. Again, predicting every college football game and every NFL game, along with we already do all MMA, UFC, Bellator, PFL on the channel as well. I think next week we're going to have this college football video out on Tuesday and the NFL out on Wednesday, but you know, with no NFL this weekend, we're going to do this on Wednesday. So let's get into it. We have got every single game. We're going to be predicting certain games. You know, like last week, we didn't do too hot in the predictions, I'm not going to lie. But last week we had, we went over each game individually. We're not going to do that this week because the video would take about 4.5 hours if I did that. I'm just going to I think we have 12 games that I'm just going to break down individually, and then I'm going to show you what we have going on for every other game, starting with every game on Thursday and Friday. Here it is. Yeah. We're going to go over all these really quickly, and then we will get into our feature games. Starting things off with Rutgers and Howard. I'm taking Rutgers to cover 35.5. I don't think Howard's very good. It's the first game on Thursday. It's at 6 o'clock in New Jersey. I think Rutgers does cover. I think it's 36 isn't too much for them. I know, again, last week, no winning team covered, but I do think Rutgers gets it done. Okay, West Carolina versus NC State. I think NC State covers that. I think NC State is a dark horse to win the ACC. I really like them this year. West Carolina is not the best FCS school. I think NC State takes care of them easily. I'm going to say they cover 32.5. Wake Forest and North Carolina A&T. I think North Carolina A&T can cover 35.5. Again, Rutgers, we're having covering that. Wake Forest, I don't think they're as good. I think North Carolina A&T, I don't think they're that great, but they can stay in the game with Wake Forest. And again, a lot of these games with these FCS schools playing FBS schools, it's kind of just a coin toss for some of these, considering the spreads. Again, Las Vegas does this very well. Or the bookies, whoever makes the lines, they do this really well. They set the lines. Again, like Wake Forest covering 35.5 is difficult to predict. I don't think they will. I think, again, for me, again, they have to get up by They have to get up by 6 touchdowns. That's hard to do. I do think they win the game, obviously, but I don't think they cover that. We've got New Hampshire versus UCF. I think New Hampshire covers 41. Now, I know they lost their starting quarterback. We will get to him in a minute. He is at Minnesota this year. I know they're not as good, but New Hampshire throws the ball a lot. They are an air raid type school. I think they keep in that game with UCF. I'm not too impressed with Central Florida. And again, 41 points is a lot, so I think New Hampshire does cover that. Jackson State versus UL Monroe. I think UL Monroe at home only getting 8.5. I think they do cover that. Jackson State's been good in years past, but again, 9 points is not a lot. I think UL Monroe is able to cover that. I wouldn't say pretty easily, but I think they win that game by about 2 touchdowns. Our next one, we have got Lafayette taking on Buffalo. I just don't think 4 points is that much. I think Buffalo covers that. I think they win it by about a touchdown. I think that game's a little bit mispriced. I understand Buffalo's not very good, but Lafayette's just an FCS school. I think Buffalo's able to go out there and win that game. Fordham versus Bowling Green. Again, 16.5 is not a lot. I think Bowling Green beats them. Again, some of these schools, it's their first game of the year. Most of them, it's their first game of the year. Some of these FCS have played. But I do think, again, Bowling Green's able to cover that 16.5. It's not a lot of points. I think they're able to go out there and do it. Central Connecticut versus Central Michigan. Again, this is one where I don't know if Central Michigan can beat anybody by 32 points. I think Central Connecticut holds on. And again, I obviously think Central Michigan wins the game, but picking against the spread, I think Central Connecticut can keep it somewhat of a ball game. Arkansas Pine Bluff taking on Arkansas. Arkansas Pine Bluff's horrible. They are really bad for an FCS school. Arkansas gets them at home in Little Rock. I think Arkansas completely beats the brakes off them. They're going to win this game by 63 points. Again, we saw it last year. I think the biggest blowout of any of the games was the Oregon. Oh God, who did they play last year? Week 1. They blew somebody out. That FCS school is going to come up later in the video. I'm just blanking. Was it Weber State? I'm not sure. I think it was Weber. Or was it Idaho State? I don't know. But Oregon beat the brakes off a team like 70-7. I think that this game right here with Arkansas and Arkansas Pine Bluff is something like that. I think the Razorbacks go in there and absolutely decimate this Arkansas Pine Bluff team. I think they're way better. They will cover 49. I think they're going to win this game by about 63. We got Toledo versus Duquesne. Toledo lost their starting quarterback, Daquan Finney's at Baylor now. Toledo got a lot worse in the portal, I think. I still think that obviously they're going to beat Duquesne, but it's 28.5. Again, winning that game by 5 touchdowns is difficult. I think Toledo wins. I think they win, though, by about like 21. But give me Toledo to win that game. Mizzou versus Murray State. I think Missouri is really good this year, obviously. Again, right, they had a really good season in 2023. I know 46.5 is a lot of points, but Murray State, that's a basketball school coming out the Ohio Valley. I don't think they're able to keep in this game. Well, obviously, they're not going to be able to because this game, again, 46.5 points. But I do think Missouri beats them by a lot. Again, 46.5 is a lot to cover, but I think if any team's going to do it, it's going to be Missouri. They're coming into this game ranked number 11. I really like this team this year. Again, another dark horse to win the SEC. Give me Mizzou to cover 46.5. Kansas versus Lindenwood. Again, a lot of, hype, I would say, is around Kansas. They have really improved their program over the last couple of years, and they're continuing to do so, starting the season ranked 22nd. I think they go in there and beat Lindenwood by a lot. 44, I get it, a lot of points, but some of these, again, ranked teams in the top 10 should be able to go out there and absolutely put a beat down on these FCS schools, and Lindenwood is nothing special. Kansas will cover, and they will win by more than 44 points. We are going to skip a couple games because those games are going to be on the features, so if you don't see the game that you're looking for right now, look in either the timestamps down below in the description or just wait for later in the video. We will jump to Coastal Carolina versus Jacksonville State. I think Coastal Carolina is the better football team. I understand they're going on the road. I understand they lost their quarterback. But I just think they're the better. I really think they're the better school. I think they are. You look at what Jacksonville State's able to do. This is a team that was new to the FBS last year. I believe I think Vasco's starting for Coastal this year, right? I don't think it's Noah Kim. It's either Noah Kim or Vasco. I'm pretty sure it's Vasco. I could be mistaken. Maybe it is Noah Kim. If it is, Noah Kim's, of course, the transfer coming in from Michigan State. Is it Noah Kim? I don't think so. I think it's Vasco. I'll be honest, I'm not completely sure about that. Either way, I like both those guys. I think Vasco, again, he's a sophomore. He's got, he needs some time. Noah Kim was all right for Michigan State. Obviously, there's a reason he's not there. Aiden Childs is there, and we're going to get to Michigan State in just a few moments here. But I just think Coastal Carolina is the better football team, right? Again, McCall's not there anymore. It is what it is. Jacksonville State, all right. And the reason why they are favored to win this game is because they are at home. But I do think Coastal's just all around the way better team. I think their defense is better, and I think their offense is better too. So give me Coastal Carolina to cover 2.5. And I think they're going to win the football game too. So give me Coastal as our first underdog winner of the video. Next up, Alcorn State versus Alabama Birmingham. I think UAB wins. I think they cover by 25.5. Again, that's only 4 touchdowns. I think they're able to beat, I believe Alcorn's an HBCU. I think UAB is able to go in there, though, and dominate. I'm going to take them to cover that game. Tulane versus Southeast Louisiana. I'm surprised Tulane's only getting 26.5. I think they absolutely smashed this team. I'm taking Tulane by about 35 in this game. Tulsa versus Northwestern State. Northwestern State, this is the school, if I'm not mistaken. Again, I'm not too into FCS play. But yes, this is the school. Oh, wait, it was Jacksonville State. Hold on, I'm blanking on something real quick if I missed something on Jacksonville State. But anyways, I'll talk about this Northwestern State team. So this is the team last year who they ended their season after one of their players got killed, unfortunately. So they only played 3 games last season. It's their first game since that, and they're going on the road to Tulsa. Yeah, that's rough. I'm taking Tulsa to cover 31.5. Again, Northwestern State, these guys have not played a meaningful down of football in a very long time. They didn't get to finish out their season, obviously not to their own fault, and I'm not saying they should have continued. It's fine. I just think, again, on paper, Tulsa's the way better team. Tulsa should be able to dominate that game. We've got Utah versus Southern Utah. In Salt Lake City, you're telling me those guys over with the Utes aren't going to go in there and absolutely dominate that game. I get it. It's Cam Rising again. Bryson Barnes is now at Utah State, which I don't really like. For Utah, I really like that move for the Aggies, but you're telling me those guys over in Salt Lake City aren't going to be able to go in there and just absolutely put a beat down Southern Utah. Again, it's just one of these things. Southern Utah is coming to Utah. Those guys are not going to let that game be close. Give me the Utes. We move on to the Friday games. Lee versus Army. Army's getting 33.5 at West Point in New York. I don't know if Army can beat anybody by 33.5 points. Give me Lee to cover. Army wins the football game, but Lee will cover that one. I feel like I'm watching that just sounds like a college basketball game I'd watch at 2 p.m. On a random Wednesday. But anyways, we go on to our next slate of games. We're going to the games on Friday and early Saturday morning here. We start things off with Temple and Oklahoma. 42 points is a lot for Oklahoma to cover. I think they're a little overrated this year. I think Temple covers that. Don't get me wrong, Oklahoma's winning the football game, but I think Temple covers that. FAU versus Michigan State. I'm surprised Michigan State's only getting 14. Again, they've got a lot of Oregon State transfers. Aiden Childs is the starting quarterback of this Michigan State team. team. Florida Atlantic is not bad, but only 14 for Michigan State at East Lansing I think is a little ridiculous. I think Michigan State wins this game by about 28. I think they doubled the spread. I think Michigan State puts a beat down on FAU. I understand FAU is good. We got a new program and everything. Again, it's basically just Oregon State at Michigan State. I think Michigan State's going to go out there and win that game, and they're going to dominate FAU. Give me Michigan State to cover 14 easily. Duke and Elon. Duke got worse. Riley Leonard obviously is at Notre Dame. I think Elon's able to cover. The game's not going to be close. But again, to cover 35.5, again, if you're just scoring touchdowns, and obviously the game might not play out that way, but if you're just scoring touchdowns, you got to beat that team by 6 touchdowns. I think that's rough. Give me Elon to cover barely. West Michigan against Wisconsin. I don't think highly of this Wisconsin team at all. I think this game's really close. I really do think it is. I think Western Michigan goes into Madison and gives them a really tough game. I understand West Michigan hasn't been the greatest at, last couple of years. But I do think Wisconsin's I just think they're really shaky, I'll be honest. I'm not a fan of that team. I would bet against Indiana every single week last year, and Wisconsin was the only team who could not go to Bloomington and win. I understand that's just one game, but still, I'm not impressed with that Wisconsin team at all. I think Western Michigan goes in there and covers. I think it's going to be a very, very close game. As we go on to the Saturday games, we start things off here with Iowa and Illinois State. I understand 23 points is a lot for Iowa to beat anybody by because they're Iowa, but still their defense is good. Cade McNamara is the quarterback. I'm not the biggest Cade McNamara fan. Just on the field, I don't think he's that good, but I do think they're able to cover. Illinois State's probably not going to score. So all Iowa's got to do is score 4 touchdowns. That's a touchdown every quarter. I think they should be able to do that. I think they win this game seriously, 28-0. Give me Iowa to cover. VTech at Vanderbilt. This is one of the games I could have put on the feature, but yet again, I think Virginia Tech dominates that game. I understand it's at Vandy, but Vandy, again, had trouble with Hawaii last year early in the season at Vanderbilt. Yeah, I just think Vanderbilt's going to have a tough time in this game. VTech's pretty solid. I think the Hokies go in there and win that game. Kyron Drones and the guys are going to be able to go in there and win that game. We got UConn taking on Maryland. Maryland covers pretty easily. That line's moved even a little bit to 20.5 now. I do believe I made these graphics last night. I think Maryland covers. Obviously, Tagovailoa is not there anymore, but I still think they're a really solid school. Again, Big Ten team. They're not going to have a close game with UConn. I don't think UConn's very good. They're a school that's moving to, the Big 12 soon. I don't know if that's just in basketball, if that's in football too. If it is, God, they're going to get killed. Give me Maryland to dominate UConn at home. We go on to our next one, Austin, PA taking on Louisville. I think Austin, PA covers. I don't think very highly of Louisville. I think they're just a mess school. I think they're going to get beat up in the ACC this year, and I think Austin, PA goes in there and covers. Obviously, Louisville's going to win the football game. So again, if I'm talking about some of these FBS schools or these Power Fives or these Group of Fives, I still think they're winning the games. I just think, again, when we look at a long-term season trajectory, I just don't think Louisville's very good. Indiana State versus Purdue. This one's interesting for me because, again, Indiana State played Indiana last year in Bloomington. Indiana State kept it competitive in the first half, and then Indiana started to pull away. The line's 33.5 because Indiana, I do believe, beat Indiana State by exactly 33. So can Purdue beat Indiana State by more than what Indiana did? And I understand, again, very different circumstances the next season, but Purdue in West Lafayette did beat Indiana. Again, that doesn't really mean anything. I just think the Purdue team this year is better than the Indiana team last year. I understand Indiana improved a lot in the offseason. We're going to get to IU when we get to them in their game against Florida International. I have some stuff to say about Indiana. But I do think Purdue goes in there and covers. I don't think Indiana State's very good. The school coming out of Terre Haute, it's just They put up 7 points against Indiana last year, and again, the game was close when it was 14-7 at halftime. I think Purdue dominates. They're the way better team. I think Purdue wins by about 35-ish, and that would give us the cover. Pitt versus Kent State. I don't know how Kent State's only getting 24.5 in this game. Or I don't know how they're getting 24.5 in this game. This is ridiculous. Pitt's going to run right through them. I don't think very highly of Kent State. I did a dynasty mode where on NCAA 25 where I, marked that team, the Kent State Golden Flashes, as the worst team in college football at the, the Group of 5 level and Power 5 obviously too. But I don't think that Kent State team's very good. Obviously, they got the standout receiver Christian McCray, but they're going to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's only getting 24.5. Yeah, I don't know about that one. I think Pittsburgh dominates that game. That final score is going to be about 56-14, 56-7 in favor of Pitt. Tommy Ulatowski is not the starting quarterback, I do believe. Or I think Tommy Ulatowski will be the starting quarterback, but not at the same time. I don't know. I'm taking Pitt to win that game. We go on to our next one here, Bucknell versus Navy. Can Navy beat anybody by 33.5? Yeah, exactly. I will always, again, fade those schools, those military schools. just because I don't like, again, the clock's always running. They're, running the football all game long. I think that's really tough for them to cover. It is 5 touchdowns, but I think Bucknell, again, should be able to milk the clock a little bit, and I don't think Navy's going to be able to cover that entire 33.5. Next one, Chattanooga versus Tennessee. I think Chattanooga keeps this game a little bit competitive. Actually, no, not at all, but I do think they're able to cover the 38.5. That's just a lot of points for Tennessee. I know, again, Nico Amaliva is pretty solid, and Tennessee does score a lot, and they get to the line really quickly. I think Chattanooga is able to cover barely. I think Tennessee wins the game by 35 points. But I'm a little shaky on that one. We go on to our next one, Townsend versus Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati covers. Townsend's pretty bad. Cincinnati's solid in the Big 12. I think the Bearcats go in there and win that game. Portland State versus Washington State. Washington State's very bad. I don't think they're good at all this season. They lost all their guys. Cam Ward's obviously going to Miami now. They're in the Pac-2 with Oregon State. I think they win, but I don't think they cover by that much. I think Portland State goes out there and covers the 29.5. I understand Washington State last year. Again, they got Wisconsin in their opener, right, and they beat them in Pullman. But that Washington State team is nowhere near the Washington State team this year. Portland State is going to go in there and at least make it somewhat competitive. I think Wazoo wins by about 24. Akron versus Ohio State. Ohio State's going to dominate. Akron, DJ Ahrens is gone from Akron now. I don't even know. Oh, God, who is their starting quarterback? Is it the guy from Cal? I could be completely mistaken on this. Is Ben Finley starting? I don't know. He might be. It might be Ben Finley, or is it Bullock? I think it's Taj Bullock. I'm not completely sure on that. But DJ Ahrens was like the guy for Akron for many years. He kept them competitive in some, games that shouldn't have been competitive. Again, the game that they played at Indiana last year. This is just rough, though. Ohio State's going to dominate. In Columbus, they're getting 48.5. I think Ohio State clears that. Give me the Buckeyes. We've got Colorado State versus Texas. 32.5 is not a lot for Texas. I think they cover that pretty easily. This is a team that's going to be one of the favorites to win the SEC this season. Quinn Ewers and the guys. I think they dominate. I think Arch Manning gets in the game at the end of the game, throws a couple touchdowns. I think Texas dominates Colorado State. I don't think it's very close. FIU versus Indiana. So a new era again at Indiana. Kurt Cignetti's there. They got a lot of JMU transfers. They got Curtis Roark from Ohio as the new starting quarterback of that Indiana team. I think they do cover 21.5. Now, last year I would have said Indiana's not beating any, group of 5 team or power 5 team by 21.5. I think they do it this year again. It's a new era for Indiana. Don't get me wrong. I still think they go like 5-7. But first game of the new Kurt Cignetti era. I think the guys are pumped up to win that game. FIU's not the greatest coming out of the CUSA? CUSA, I think. Could be mistaken. I believe it's CUSA. I think Indiana goes out there and dominates. Again, those guys should be fired up to win. Will Bloomington, the city, be fired up to win that game? Probably not. They're just waiting for basketball season. But I think Indiana goes in there and dominates. Nebraska versus UTEP. Nebraska should cover 27.5. UTEP's just okay, and Nebraska, again, should be solid enough. I understand they were kind of pitiful last year at points, but I do think Nebraska will cover that margin. We have got East Michigan versus UMass. I think Eastern Michigan outright wins this game. I think the only reason UMass is favored is because the game is in Massachusetts, but I do think Eastern Michigan's a better football team as a whole, and I think they go into Amherst and win this game and obviously cover the points as well. Give me Eastern Michigan to win that game. As we move on to our next slate, yes, we got another one. I think there's 2 more. North Dakota taking on Iowa State. I think North Dakota covers here. I don't think Iowa State's very good. I think North Dakota covers the 27.5. North Dakota is the team that made the FCS playoffs last year. I think they do cover the 27.5. Don't get me wrong, though. Iowa State still wins the football game. Ohio versus Syracuse. Ohio, I know they got a lot worse in the portal. They lost a lot of guys, but I still think Ohio is one of the favorites to win the MAC this season. And what does Syracuse have? Like, seriously, I don't know if Syracuse can beat this Ohio team by that much. I understand Kyle McCord's there now, but Kyle McCord was very shaky at Ohio State. Obviously, again, it's a lot different playing at Syracuse than playing at Ohio State. You're not expected to win national championships at Syracuse, but I do think Ohio keeps it somewhat close. Do I think they win? No, but I think they'll be in this game. Give me Ohio to cover 18. Kennesaw State versus UTSA. Kennesaw State's just horrible. They really are. They were not a standout team in the FCS. They were like 3 years ago when they decided to make the move in 4 years to be in the FBS. But that's when Kennesaw State was really good. It was like 3 years ago. It was like 2019, 2020, 2021. They were really good. 2022, 2023, they weren't the greatest. They were still good for the FCS, but they weren't like, look, they're not like South Dakota State. They're not like, North Dakota State, North Dakota. They're not like those schools. Sac State, right? Davis, even to a certain extent. And sometimes Davis is good. Recently, Kennesaw State hasn't been very good. They're going to UTSA. UTSA is getting 25 at home. UTSA is going to dominate. Kennesaw State, again, when they decided to go to the FBS ranks, they were dominating at the FCS level. They were making the playoffs. I don't think they even made the playoffs last season. So give me UTSA to cover 25 at home against the Owls. Air Force versus Merrimack. Air Force should be able to cover 28.5 barely. Again, I say always fade the military schools when they have a big spread. 20.5 doesn't feel like a lot for me. I think Air Force can cover. I think they barely will. I think they win by about 31. Merrimack's not very good, so Air Force should be able to go out there and win. Next one, we have got... I may have skipped a game. I think I didn't put Northwestern versus Miami of Ohio on the sheet. I don't know why I didn't do that. That's my fault. I think Miami of Ohio goes in there and covers. I think Miami of Ohio beats Northwestern. Northwestern is horrible, okay? Again, that school is in shambles after their little scandals and whatnot. Like, again, I think Miami of Ohio goes in there and wins that game. I understand that's the one game I did not put on the graphic. That is my fault on that one. But I think Miami of Ohio, again, one of the better teams out of the MAC. They are going to be competing to win that entire thing this year, like they did last year. I think Miami of Ohio goes into Northwestern and wins. Yeah, I'm taking Miami of Ohio to go in there and win that game and cover the 2.5 as well. I don't think Northwestern's good. I think they're the worst team in the Big Ten. I think Miami of Ohio goes in there and wins that game. All right, West Illinois versus NIU. NIU should be able to cover that. West Illinois is so bad. NIU's not like, they're not even like they're that crazy of a team this year. I don't think they're going to do very great in the MAC. I just think Western Illinois is very bad, and NIU should be able to go in there and win and cover the 34.5. Boise State versus Georgia Southern. I think Georgia Southern at home can cover that. Boise State confuses me. They do. God, I forget his name. Forgive me on this. The Georgia transfer won the starting job over Malachi Nelson, I believe his name is. The USC transfer, right? He lost the quarterback battle to the Georgia transfer at Boise State. I don't think that's too big of a deal, obviously. I don't think Malachi is very good, obviously. He got 5 stars out of high school, but does that really mean anything once you get to college? No, it doesn't. I think Georgia Southern, though, at home is going to be able to keep this game a lot closer. I think Boise still wins, but I think Georgia Southern loses this game by about a touchdown. So I think, again, Georgia Southern keeps it close. It's hard to go out there and beat a team on the road by double digits, especially a team in Georgia Southern that's not that horrible. They run the ball very well. I think Georgia Southern's able to keep it close, but still lose. Old Dominion versus South Carolina. South Carolina at home should be able to cover against ODU. 21.5 is not a lot of points for South Carolina. I understand they have not been the greatest in the SEC, but I do think they're able to beat up on Old Dominion. I think they're able to cover pretty easily. Next up, Stony Brook and Marshall. Stony Brook's not very good. Marshall, I think, is able to cover 28.5. UC Davis versus Cal. Davis, I believe, lost to Stanford. God, I forget how much they lost to Stanford by 2 years ago. I think it was 21. So it's a matter of, can Cal cover that? I don't think they are. Davis is a really good FCS school. It's not that far of a drive for them to go down to from Davis down to Berkeley. I think Berkeley still wins the game, don't get me wrong, but I think Davis is able to keep it really competitive. I think Cal wins the game by about 14. Again, Cal, I know they're completely different teams. When Davis played Stanford 2 years ago and kept it somewhat close compared to the Cal team now, obviously Cal this year is much better than what Ashton Daniels and Stanford are this year, and we're going to get to Stanford later in the video. But I do think Cal's able to win the game, but I think Davis is able to keep it competitive. I really like Davis in the FCS this year. I think Sac State's obviously still better, but give me Davis to cover 20.5 against Cal. To our next one, we've got North Texas versus South Alabama. South Alabama at home is only getting 5 points. I think they're able to cover that and win. I'm taking South Alabama to win this game out of the Fun Belt. Mississippi State and Eastern Kentucky, 24.5 is not a lot for Mississippi State. They're an SEC team at home. They should be able to cover. Give me Miss State to win this game. Liberty versus Campbell. Campbell's very bad. Liberty, I think, is going to be in the playoffs this season. They got Slaughter. They got their guys. I understand they finished their season on a horrible note last year in the Fiesta Bowl against Oregon. They better be prepared to play one of those teams again, though, because they are going to make the playoffs. I think they are going to. They are going to run the table in the CUSA, and they cannot deny them the postseason at 13-0. I think Liberty makes the playoffs since the start of their run, and they should be able to beat up on Campbell. So give me Liberty to cover 35.5. I know it's a lot of points for Liberty, but Liberty's a pretty solid school right now. Keaton Slaughter's solid, and I really like that team this year. Do I like them in the playoffs, though? Definitely not, but give me Liberty to win this game. We got Richmond taking on Virginia. Not a lot of points for Virginia. I understand they were bad last season, but I do think they're able to win by 3 touchdowns. Give me Virginia, to beat the Richmond Spiders. Norfolk State versus East Carolina. Norfolk State, I believe, played last week, if I'm not mistaken. Is this the team I'm thinking of? There's a lot of schools. Yes, they lost to Florida A&M by 1, 24-23. They've already played a week. I like them to cover the 33.5. East Carolina's all right, but again, 33 Covering 34 points is a lot, and especially against a team who's already played this season. I understand they lost to Florida A&M, but I do think Norfolk State's able to keep it in that 28-ish range. Give me Norfolk State to cover against Eastern Carolina. Idaho State versus Oregon State. Oregon State, again, lost a lot in the portal. I do think they're able still to cover, though, against Idaho State. I think they're going to win by about 35-ish. Obviously, Uyangale's gone. Childs is gone, but who cares? Again, Uyangale was kind of bad for Florida. No, he was really bad in that last game for Florida State. I don't think the most of the Beavs this year, but I do think they're able to cover this game. I don't think Idaho State's too great. Give me Oregon State to cover 27.5. I may win by 28. I think that game's really close in the line, but I do think Oregon State does cover. Alabama versus Western Kentucky. Give me the Hilltoppers to cover 31.5. I like this team a lot. They got TJ Finley from Texas State. Texas State was solid last year with Finley. I think Western Kentucky is a dark horse team to make the playoffs. I got my dark horses to make the playoffs out of the group of fives. Liberty's obviously the front runner, but I like Western Kentucky a lot, and I like a team that we're going to talk about later a lot too. Western Kentucky's got talent. They've got size. Obviously, Alabama's going to win that game, but I think Western Kentucky only loses this one by like 21-17-ish range. Not that's the final score, but like anywhere from 17 to 21 points. I think that's where Western Kentucky loses this game. I think they're able to be competitive. Again, first Alabama game without Nick Saban. I think Western Kentucky gives them a little bit of a fight in Tuscaloosa. Don't get me wrong, though. Bama still wins the game. But yeah, give me Western Kentucky to cover, just like how I'm taking Furman to cover against Ole Miss. Again, Ole Miss is really good, but 43 points is a lot, and I think Furman's able to stay in that game a little bit. They're not a horrible FCS school. I think Furman goes in there and loses by about 35 to 40, but they will still cover at the same time. UTM takes on, we've got Kansas State. I think UTM can cover this. Give me UT Martin. Kansas State doesn't really fly off the table for me this year. I don't really like them that much in the Big 12. I think they win the game, obviously, but UT Martin's able to cover that. We've got Central Arkansas versus Arkansas State. Arkansas State's really bad, and Central Arkansas is solid. Central Arkansas is going to cover, and they're going to make this game really close. I think this is like a 3-point win for Arkansas State. I don't think they really jump off the table at all. I think, again, Central Arkansas keeps it competitive, but Arkansas State ultimately does win the game. But give me UCA to go in there and cover. Ooh, we've got another full slate. Let's keep on rolling. We have got Bethune-Cookman taking on USF. Bethune-Cookman's so bad at football. UCF was able to stay competitive with some good teams last season. I understand it's at the beginning of the year where they have that really close game against Milroe and Alabama, but I do think USF beats the brakes off of Bethune-Cookman. Bethune-Cookman is really bad. Tarleton State versus Baylor. Yeah, I got Tarleton State to cover that. I like Baylor a lot. Now, I'm not a Baylor fan at all. I'm a big RG3 guy, so I have the jersey or whatnot. I like Daquan Finn a lot too. I think Daquan Finn's gonna have a really good season for Baylor. I just think Tarleton State's pretty solid, and I think they're going to be able to cover the 26.5. Give me Baylor to win by about 21, but Tarleton State will cover 26.5. I think the spread's too big on that game. We've got Houston versus UNLV. I'm surprised UNLV's getting that much love on the road here. I think Houston wins the game when they cover. They're the better school all around. UNLV is okay. Again, they did well in the Mountain West last season, but going on the road to Houston I think is very difficult. Houston's a Big 12 school now. Are they going to be that great in the Big 12 this season? Probably not, but I do think Houston goes out there and wins this game by about a touchdown. I'm surprised UNLV's getting that much love on the road. I think Houston kind of dominates that game. I think they're going to be in control of the game for the most part, but I do think UNLV will just kind of hang around, but I think Houston wins that one. Tennessee Tech versus Middle Tennessee. Tennessee Tech's not very good. Middle Tennessee should be able to cover 23.5. It's not a lot of points for them. Sam Houston versus Rice. Sam Houston was really bad last season until they weren't. Like, they really turned it around their last 4 games. I think they started 1-7, and they might have finished 4-8, I think, maybe 3-9. I don't know. They were a lot better though in the second half of their season last year. I think Rice is just all around a better school. JT Daniels obviously not at Rice anymore, but I do think Rice is able to go out there and win. It's at Rice. It's in Houston. They should be able to win this game by more than 10. Give me, what is Rice? Rice the Owls, I believe. Not the Owls? Yeah, give me the Owls to cover 10. Next up, we have got Nevada versus Troy. Oh, God. Give me Troy to cover. Now, Nevada surprised me last week. I didn't think they were going to be that competitive with SMU, and they had SMU almost beat, and SMU came back and won. Now they go on the road, though, to Alabama. That's a far way to go. You're going all the way from Reno to Troy. I think Troy's the better football team, and I think they're able to cover 8.5. Nevada, sure, they looked good last season. They're not going to do it to us back-to-back weeks. Give me Troy to cover that game. North Alabama and Memphis. Memphis is way better than North Alabama. Some books aren't even offering this game. Give me Memphis to cover by that 38.5. Same with this game. A lot of books aren't offering this one either. Oregon should be able to cover against Idaho. Guys, Oregon might win the entire thing this season. I think they probably will win the Big Ten, and I think they're going to be a very tough team to beat in the playoffs. Idaho, again, a former FBS school coming down to former FBS school, went down to the FCS. Oregon I believe it was against Weber State last year. I could be mistaken, or was it Idaho State? I don't know, but last year, week 1, they absolutely killed a team 70 to about 7. They should do that again here. Oregon is the way better team. I'm really excited to see what we get out of Dylan Gabriel this season. Is he Bo Nix? No. Is he as good as Bo Nix? No. But I do think Dylan Gabriel is able to push this team very far this season. Give me Oregon to win and beat up Idaho by a very big margin. Alabama A&M versus Auburn. Alabama A&M is not very good. Auburn's able to cover that game. UCLA versus Hawaii. I don't think Hawaii is very good. UCLA is not very good either, in all fairness. But this game kind of reminds me of when Stanford went to Hawaii week 1 last year, and Stanford beat them by about 21-ish. UCLA should be able to do the same. UCLA, I understand, has their really rough points in their games, but Hawaii's not very good this season. Give me UCLA to cover that. And again, Hawaii was a team last week. I thought that was a pretty easy pick. Delaware State to cover that one. Hawaii was getting 40.5 at home, and Delaware State covered that easily. That game was about 14-7, 7-7 at halftime. Yeah, UCLA should be able to dominate Hawaii. Albany Christian versus Texas Tech. I think Albany Christian's able to cover 32.5. Texas Tech's still able to win the game. But Albany Christian is not horrible coming out of the FCS for this game against T-Tech. Southern Miss versus Kentucky. Kentucky should dominate. Kentucky's just a way better field. It's at Kroger Field in Lexington. I think the Wildcats win and put a beat down on Southern Miss. Southern Illinois versus BYU. I don't know why this game is so competitive on the line. I understand Southern Illinois wasn't horrible in the FCS last year, and BYU is just a bad school as a whole. They're just not supposed to be very good in the Big 12 this year. I believe Gary Bohannon's getting the start for them. I would expect Gary Bohannon to start, the former Baylor Bear. I think BYU covers and they win by about 21. Obviously, they're not at the levels like they were years ago, right? With Zach Wilson, Dax Milline, and then of course they had Jaron Hall and Puka Nacua. They are not that anymore. But I do think they're able to beat and dominate Southern Illinois. I'm surprised only getting 14.5. I understand the BYU offense isn't very good, but they should be able to cover that line. Georgia Tech and Georgia State. Give me Georgia State to cover. I think this line's a little inflated because of Georgia Tech last week. Don't get me wrong. Haynes King played a brilliant game. Don't get me wrong. He played very well. My thing is, though, that's more Florida State sucks than Georgia Tech is very good. They still will beat Georgia State. But I think they win this game by 17 points. Okay, I think Georgia State covers. I think Georgia Tech's getting a little bit of a boost just because of that game against FSU. Obviously, they are. But I think Georgia State keeps it a little bit competitive. Give me Georgia State to cover that one. Houston Christian versus Southern Methodist. I don't even believe there's lines for that game. I don't think there is. It's not even on the sheet that I have here. SMU should be able to win. I don't know what the line is, I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't take them to cover against anybody, though, at this point. Grambling takes on Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns. Grambling's not horrible. You might see him in the Celebration Bowl every once in a while. I think they cover 32.5. Give me Grambling to go in there and not keep the game competitive, but lose the game by 4 touchdowns, so that's a cover. We have got Nichols taking on Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech's only getting 8.5. It's not like Nichols is one of the best FCS schools. Louisiana Tech should be able to cover that game. They should be able to win by 2 touchdowns, I think. So 8.5 is not that much for them to go out there and win. Robert Morris versus Utah State. Bryson Barnes at Utah State. I like that team a lot out of the Mountain West this season. Utah State should be able to win. They should be able to dominate. Give me Utah State to win that game by about 40. And again, Robert Morris isn't the greatest. So we go on to James Madison and Charlotte. So Charlotte was the team. I thought it was Jacksonville State for a minute. Charlotte is the school that one of their coaches said they're missing half their players. I don't know what for. I'll be honest, I haven't read too much into that. James Madison, they lost a lot in the portal. Again, Kurt Signetti went to IU. A lot of these guys followed him to IU. JMU, though, was very good last season. They were undefeated until like week 9-ish, week 10-ish. They brought College Game Day down to JMU last year. They will dominate Charlotte, especially a Charlotte team who is either injured or sick. I don't know what's going on with them. But with all that being said, JMU should go into Charlotte and dominate. 7.5 isn't a lot. I think it's been moved since I made the graph. I think it's 8.5 now. But I would still jump on that right now. I think JMU dominates that game. I understand, again, they lost in the portal, but I still think JMU is the way better school. We have got Lamar versus Texas State. Texas State lost TJ Finley. They're not the same team as last year. I think Lamar keeps it not close, but they do cover the spread. So give me Lamar to cover 32.5. As we got our final games here, we have got Southeast Missouri State versus New Mexico State. Yeah, give me New Mexico State to win. I understand they're not going to be very good this season, but 8.5 is not a lot for them at home. I think New Mexico State's able to cover. New Mexico versus Arizona. So we saw the Lobos last week. They choked the hell out of that game against Montana State. That team's not very good. They showed glimpses of, bright spots early in that first half. They looked really good. They got the fumble recovery for a touchdown. They're not horrible, but Arizona with Noah Fafita and T-Mac and the guys are going to be really good this season. I think Arizona's probably the favorite. I like them a lot to win the Big 12 this year. I understand Utah's going to be good in Colorado too. We'll see about Colorado. But Arizona should dominate New Mexico at home in Tucson. Wyoming versus Arizona State. Yeah, I think Wyoming is going to be able to keep this game close. I don't know if they're going to win this one. Nah, give me Wyoming to beat Arizona State. Arizona State's bad this year. They are. I think Wyoming goes in there in Tempe and wins that game against ASU. Yeah, I just think Wyoming's able to keep it close. They had a very, I think Wyoming beat Fresno last year. They beat T-Tech early in the season. I think Wyoming goes in there and beats Arizona State. Give me Wyoming to cover and to win. Our final game before we get into the features, Weber State versus Washington. Again, Washington's not the same team anymore. They lost Jabbar Muhammad. He transferred to Oregon, their best corner. Again, Jalen Polk, McMillan, and Odunze obviously are all in the NFL now. Same with Michael Penix. Will Rogers is the new starting quarterback at Washington. I just don't know how good Washington's going to be this season. 7-5, 8-4. I think that's kind of where I have them. Again, they're going to beat Weber State, but do they destroy Weber State? I don't know. They're not that same high-scoring, high-tempo offense like they were last season when they made their run to the national championship game. I just don't think they're at that same level anymore. I think they win. It's the 8 o'clock game on the Big Ten Network. The game used to be on the Pac-12 Network, RIP. But I think Weber State keeps it a little bit competitive. Again, Washington had their games last year, like when they went to Stanford and when they had these games where they could, who was it? It was the ASU game, I think, where they only beat him by, was it ASU or was it Arizona? I don't know, where they only beat him by like 3 points. I don't know. A lot of new guys are on this UW team. I think they win, but I think it's a closer game than a lot of people would think. I think they win by like 14, 17, but I think Weber State's able to kind of stay in it. I'm just not very high on Washington this season. Don't get me wrong. I think they still win like 8 games, but I don't know. I don't know if they're able to really just blow teams out the wire like they did last year with Penix, Odunze, McMillan, and Polk. And again, they lost a lot on defense as well. Jabbar Muhammad is a big loss for that team. Okay, let's move on to our feature games. We start things off with North Carolina and Minnesota. So I had to go over this one just because it's interesting, right? So Max Johnson is going to be the starting quarterback at UNC. Was LSU quarterback, then went to A&M. Now he is at North Carolina. And for Minnesota, right? I'm blanking on his name. Max Brosmer is the starting quarterback now for Minnesota. He is a senior. It's his last year in college football. We talked about New Hampshire earlier. He dominated at New Hampshire last season. 29 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 3,500 yards. This guy's good. He was an All-American at the FCS level. I think he's going to really be able to bring energy to this Minnesota team. I think this is why this game is really fun. It's close in the lines for a good reason. I just think Max Johnson is able to pull away with UNC in this game. I think Brosmer is going to be very good this year. I think Brosmer is going to have... I think if they really open up the passing attack for Minnesota this year, I don't want to say like a Bailey Zappi type season, obviously, like Zappi would have at WKU, obviously, because Brosmer's playing in the Big Ten. But if Brosmer went down to that CUSA Sun Belt level, I think he would have a season like that where he really dominates and finds himself in the late rounds of the NFL draft this season. I just don't know what he's able to do in the Big Ten. I think it's a really good opportunity for him, and I'm really excited to see what Brosmer brings. But I do think North Carolina is the better school. I think they cover the 2.5, and I think obviously they win the game. So give me the Tar Heels to go to Minneapolis and beat Minnesota. Again, I just don't know how good Minnesota is going to be this season. They were 5-7 last year. They made a bowl game. They won the Quick Lane Bowl over Bowling Green. I think UNC is the better school. I know Drake May's gone, but it's fine. Max Johnson he's no Drake May, but I think he's able to win this game for UNC. They cover and they win on the road. Our next one, oh man, North Dakota State versus Colorado. It's such a bad game for Colorado. It is. I think they win, and I want Colorado to be successful. I am a huge Coach Prime fan. I love Colorado. I watched every single game they played last season. I really like Shador, but man, this is rough. You're playing the number 2 FCS school in the country, North Dakota State. Obviously, again, you know the quarterback pipeline they had at one point, Wentz, Lance, Easton Stick. I mean, again, they had really good guys back to back to back. God, what did they do in the FCS playoffs last year? They lost to Montana, who ended up losing to South Dakota State. But again, this is a very good NDSU team, right? Last year, they beat Montana State on the road in the playoffs. They went to Bozeman and won. They went to South Dakota and won, and they just ran into Montana in the semifinals, which is a very good team, and lost. Yeah, I think NDSU is going to give Colorado a lot of trouble. And again, I'm concerned about Colorado. They've got Nebraska coming up in 2 weeks in Lincoln. Are they overlooking this one? I don't know. I think it was a horrible decision for them to schedule North Dakota State this game. It is a horrible decision. They should have scheduled, I don't know, North Colorado for this one. I'm serious. I think they win, but I think they're in a dogfight. How much has that O-line really improved for Shedeur Sanders? I don't know. Travis Hunter's playing both ways, but at some point again, you saw, Ao Minor dominate Travis Hunter in this back half of that game in the Stanford, Colorado game last season. And again, that's nothing against Travis Hunter. I think he's an incredible talent. I think he's going to be a very good corner in the NFL. But when you're going both ways, it takes a toll eventually. I just don't know how good Colorado is going to be against this NDSU team, who everyone, I think, at Colorado, not everyone, but I think a lot of players at Colorado are going to be overlooking because they have that Nebraska game on the docket coming up. I just think it's a rough first game. I think they win, but I think they're in for a dogfight. Give me Colorado to win, but I don't think they cover. I think North Dakota State covers that line. I like the Buffs. I want them to be successful, but man, they couldn't have asked for a tougher first game out of an FCS school than this. The only other tougher one is going to be a school we're going to talk about later, but give me Colorado to win, but I don't think they cover. To our next one. I'm only doing this one for my own personal entertainment. I'm going to this game, so San Jose State versus Sacramento State is probably the only game I'm going to this week, because, I don't think I can get out to Stanford TCU. I definitely can't, unfortunately, even though I do want to go to that game. We're going to talk about that game in a second, but San Jose State, Sacramento State is just interesting for me, because, again, I'm, in the area. Sacramento State's one of the better FCSs, but 3.5 is not a lot for San Jose State. San Jose State wasn't all that bad last year, right? They got the new coach. They got the former Navy head coach. I'm not completely sure how to say his name, I'll be honest with you. He's from Hawaii, right? I think they're going to be all right this season, right? They were a team that was co-champions in the Mountain West last season in the regular season, because they went, 6-2 in conference. They had a horrible start to the year last year. They went 1-5, and they ended up running the table after that, right, all the way into their bowl game where they lost the Hawaii Bowl to Coastal Carolina. This is not a bad team in San Jose State. They really got it figured out the back half of last season. I understand Sacramento State beat Stanford last year, but a lot of teams can beat Stanford. San Jose State might be able to beat Stanford this year when they play in the last week of this year in San Jose. Stanford's horrible, and Sac State's a really good FCS, but I just don't think 3.5 is that much for San Jose State. I think they go out there and win. First game of the year, new program, or not same program, but new tradition, right? Just a new coaching staff in San Jose State. That's what I'm going for. I think SJSU wins, and I think they cover the 3.5. I think it's close, though. I think it's close, but I think San Jose State wins by 7. It's on Thursday night. I'm excited to go to that one. I haven't been to a college football game in a minute since the Big Ten title game. So let's go into our next one. TCU Stanford. Guys, Stanford's horrible. Stanford's really bad. They've got guys, but it's limited. I mean, again, they got Ao Minor, who's good. I like Ao Minor a lot, but I think he's a guy who's going to hit the portal this year. Ashton Daniels leaves a lot to be desired, I think. They should have flopped their first 2 games. This should be Cal Poly this week. This should be St. Louis Obispo this week. But no, they're playing TCU and then they're playing Cal Poly next week. I don't like it at all. I understand TCU was incredibly underwhelming last season. They were, right? I mean, again, they were a team with Max Duggan 2 years ago with all their guys, Kendre Miller, Quentin Johnson, who made the national championship game. They lost to Georgia, and last year they didn't even make a bowl game. They improved a lot in the portal, I thought. They got a lot of guys. They got 3 guys from Notre Dame, which, again, not a lot of guys who played, but still, it's fine. 8.5 is not a lot for them to cover on the road here. I just think Stanford's really bad. I think TCU goes out there and dominates that football game. I understand they're not the same team that they once were with Duggan and Johnston and all those guys, but 8.5, I think TCU is able to go out there and win that game. Stanford was just so horrible last season. They really were. Again, Sacramento State, very good FCS school, but they lost that game, right? Sac State's coach is the David Shaw replacement at Stanford, and they lost that game 23-30. Their only wins last season were Hawaii, Washington State, and I don't know how the hell they beat Colorado. That game was, I do know how they lost that game, but Ao Minor went crazy. But again, they won 3 games last season. TCU won 5. I don't think Stanford's that good. They are in every ranking you look at, in every prediction you look at for Stanford in the ACC this year, they are dead last. That's for a reason. Stanford's going to lose this game, and they're going to lose it by a pretty fair margin to TCU. Again, I'm not the highest on this TCU team. Don't get me wrong. They're interesting, but I think they win. Give me TCU to win and dominate, just because I think it's more of, unfortunately, it's more of Stanford being bad than TCU being really good. Okay, to our next one here, we move on to Clemson in Georgia, the big game on Saturday morning or Saturday at noon. I don't know. I think Georgia beats them down pretty badly. I think Georgia wins this game by about 24-ish. Carson Beck's back. He's one of these guys who might be in the Heisman race this season. Trevor Etienne's around, obviously, who transferred from Florida over to Georgia. He's going to be the starting running back. At least he should be. Again, they lost some of their guys. Ladd McConkey's gone or whatnot. That's fine. The defense is still dominant for Georgia. This is the best team in college football, other than maybe Oregon, I think. Those are the two best teams, in my opinion, to start the season. And Clemson, again, out the gates last year, they went to Duke. They lost, right? I get it's a completely different team, but to start the year, they lost at Duke. Cade Klubnik's back. That's great. This is a school that doesn't really utilize the portal that much. They just don't. I don't think they're that great. I don't think they are. I think Georgia dominates. It's very tough for Clemson to go to Georgia and win. And on top of that, can they cover the 14? I don't think so. Again, Georgia lost one game last season. They lost the SEC championship game to Alabama. That is the only game they lost the entire season. You saw what they did. Again, we will get to Florida State in a minute, and I will have my stuff to say about Florida State, right? But you saw the way they dominated them in the Orange Bowl. They won? They won 63-3, right? Their one loss the entire season was Alabama by 3 points in the SEC title game. That is the only game they lost all season long. And I understand. They played some bad teams non-conference, right? They did. They played Ball State and they played UAB, whatever, right? But still, this is a team that dominated a lot in the SEC prior to the Bama game, right? They were able to beat Tennessee on the road. They were able to dominate Ole Miss, who was ranked number 9 going into that game. Again, it's a new team this year, but Georgia just keeps on reloading and getting better. I think they dominate the game against Clemson. I don't think Clemson's very good this season. I don't think they're one of the better. I think they are one of the better teams in the ACC, but I don't think they win it. I like NC State over them, and I like a couple other schools in the ACC. I don't know about Miami. But yeah, I don't know how good the ACC is going to be this year. But give me Georgia to win and to cover. So give me Georgia to win by 14 and give me them to win by like 21-ish. I like the Bulldogs. They're one of the better teams in college football as a whole. To our next one, Penn State versus West Virginia. I think Penn State goes into Morgantown, and I think they go out there, and I think they cover. I am not blown away by Drew Aller. Don't get me wrong. I'm really not. I think Singleton's good. He's their lead back. I'm not blown away by WVU, though, either. Again, they're a middle-of-the-pack Big 12 team. This is a school in West Virginia last season who went, what? Where did they go? They went 9-4, 8-4 in the regular season. They won the Duke's Mayo Bowl over North Carolina. Their losses were Penn State, Houston, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma. So again, they're just running back the game they played at University Park last year, but just on the road now, or they get it at home in Morgantown. Penn State last year beat them by, 23? Again, I understand different teams or whatnot. Penn State, I think they're still very comparable to last season. I'm not going to lie. But Penn State just dominated that game from pillar to post, really. They were up, They were up 14-7 at halftime, really just pulled away, though, in the second half. I think Penn State, again, they are still a very solid school. I understand they didn't look great at the tail end of the season last year when they lost to Michigan. They lost to Ohio State, and they lost to Ole Miss, but those are their only losses all season long. I don't think this game being in West Virginia makes too much of a difference to the point where Penn State's not able to fully cover that. What is it? It's only 8.5. Yeah, it's only 8.5 for Penn State. They should be able to win this game by multiple touchdowns. I like Penn State, the Nittany Lions, to go into West Virginia and win. I just don't know what West Virginia is going to be this season. I think they're a decent Big 12 team, but I don't think they're a team that's going to really be contending for any national championships, nor do I think they're going to be competing for the Big 12 title either. I think this is a school that finishes around that 8-4, 7-5 mark. Give me Penn State to go into Morgantown and win and cover. Give me the Nittany Lions. To our next one. Oh man, do I have stuff to say about this game. I'm taking the Jackrabbits to go into Oklahoma State and win. Yes, Ollie Gordon might be the best player in college football. That might be true, but South Dakota State is the best school in the FCS, and if South Dakota State was in the FBS, I'd say they'd be in the top 25, and I'd say they make the playoffs this season. They would have that Liberty type effect, but they are better than Liberty. I think they are. South Dakota State, they are everything that, the media, I think, will make them out to be in the hype for this game. There is a reason they are only getting 9.5 on the road against Oklahoma State. No, they're going to cover that for sure, and they're going to go in and win the football game. They are going. South Dakota State would beat a lot of these D1 FBS schools, and I understand Oklahoma State has got high expectations this season, but this is an even bigger trap game than what Colorado has against North Dakota State. This is the biggest trap game you could ask for. The Jackrabbits went undefeated last season. They beat some really good FCS schools. We're talking about Villanova, Albany, Youngstown State, North Dakota State, South Dakota, South Illinois, North Dakota, and Montana State, and Montana in the championship game. They beat almost everybody in the top 10 last year and in the top 15. They've won back-to-back FCS championships. They beat North Dakota State 2 years ago. They had that uber close game against Iowa 2 years ago where they lost 3-7. This is the best school in the FCS, and they're going to go into Oklahoma State and they're going to win. Oklahoma State last year lost to South Alabama in Stillwater 33-7. I understand it's a new team, but still, they lost in the beginning of the season to South Alabama and they got dominated. Who's to say that South Dakota State's not going to have that same exact impact on them? I understand Oklahoma State's gotten a lot better. I really think they have. Alan Bowman at quarterback, obviously Ollie Gordon might be the best player in college football. But when you take that away, South Dakota State will be able to score on this team. Their defense will be able to keep them in this game. This is going to be a high-scoring affair that South Dakota State out-sprints Oklahoma State in. Give me the Jackrabbits to go into Stillwater and win. There is your upset pick of the week. I really like the Jackrabbits to defeat the team that is projected to place third in the Big 12, only behind Utah and Kansas State. Give me the Jackrabbits to win. And again, I'm not high on a lot of these Big 12 teams. I'm really not. I'm not high on Kansas State. I'm not high on Oklahoma State. I'm not high on, actually, those are really the only two schools I'm not really that high on. I'm high on Utah, Kansas, and Arizona, but that's besides the point. Give me the Jackrabbits to go into Oklahoma State and win. Yeah, give me the Jacks. Let's do it. On to our next one here. Florida versus Miami. I think Florida wins. It's every season with Miami, man. And going on the road in Gainesville, it's a tough It's a tough ask, man. It's a really tough ask. And I get Florida lost their guys. Ricky Pearsall obviously got drafted in the first round of the Niners or whatnot. But I do think Florida goes out here and wins this game. Miami, every season, they're supposed to be good. They just are, and they lay an egg every single year. This is a team that went 7-6 last year. With all that talent, they went 7-6. I understand Cam Ward's in now. I really like Cameron Ward. I think he's good. Damian Martinez is going to be the starting running back of this team. Xavier Restrepo is back. But I just think it's a tough out. I think it's a really tough out. At Florida, Graham Mertz is starting, obviously, for that team this season. I don't know. Florida as home underdogs is really questionable to me. Don't get me wrong. I think they cover and they win. Just because, again, I don't trust in Miami at all. I understand that, again, they brought in a bunch of guys from the portal, but Mario Cristobal's still there, and I don't really trust Mario Cristobal to go into Florida and win. So give me the Gators to win that game. I understand Florida wasn't, they weren't beating the brakes off teams last year. They were 5-7 as well. I get that. They had that big first game on the road against Utah where they lost. Bryson Barnes went in there, and Bryson Barnes at home beat them 24-11, and Florida has not won a game since their win over South Carolina last October, but I think this is where they get the win. I think they regrouped a lot in the offseason. I understand they lost ETN, but it's fine. I think they regrouped. They got Graham Mertz in at quarterback. I think Florida wins, and I think they cover. So give me Florida to upset Miami in Gainesville. Again, home underdogs. I really like that pick for the Florida Gators. To our next one, Notre Dame versus Texas A&M. I'm taking Texas A&M to win and cover at Kyle Field. I just don't know about... I don't think Notre Dame's bad, right? Riley Leonard's the starting quarterback this season, but they just lost a lot in the offseason, especially just to the NFL draft. The portal wasn't too kind to them, I don't really think. They got Riley Leonard. It is what it is. They got Buchner from Alabama, but it's just, I don't know. I don't think they're that great to the point where they can go into Texas A&M and win. I think A&M beats them. I like A&M a lot this season. I know they were just meh last year, right? They lost in the Texas Bowl to Oklahoma State to close the year. But at home, I like Texas A&M to win. Notre Dame, they're a different team this year, right? Sam Hartman's not the guy anymore. They replaced him with Riley Leonard. But again, Notre Dame played Duke last year. They went to Duke and won. But some of their games, right? They lost at Louisville, lost at Clemson, lost at home against Ohio State. I think it's, I don't think this is going to be too high scoring of a game. I think Texas A&M just wins. I'll be honest, I'm never really high on Notre Dame teams just because, I don't know, I just feel like they're a little overrated just because they're an independent and they kind of pick, they definitely pick their games and who they want to play year by year. Audric Estime is not around anymore. He got picked in the 5th round when he went to the NFL, obviously on the Broncos. I don't know why he left, honestly. Because he was just a junior, and he was, again, the heir apparent to Kyron Williams at Notre Dame. I don't know why Estime left. He still had a year left in college, but he just, wanted to go to the NFL. I think A&M wins. I don't think Notre Dame's got the same rushing attack. I think Riley Leonard is an improvement over Sam Hartman, but I don't think the rest of the team is as good. Obviously, Joe Alt's not around anymore. I think as a whole, Notre Dame got worse. I think they got better at the quarterback position, but as a whole, the team's not as good. Give me Texas A&M to win at home and to cover the 3 points. To our next one here. Interesting game. Again, Michigan's winning this one, obviously. If you want to take the, minus 3,900 odds, go take it. I wouldn't. But I think Fresno State covers the 22 in this game. Fresno State, I said it earlier, this is my dark horse to go out and make the playoffs. I really like this team in the Mountain West this year. They struggled a little bit last year. They were ranked at one point last year, and they went into Wyoming and lost at Laramie. Okay, they had a rough second half of the season. They lost to San Jose State, lost to New Mexico, lost to San Diego State. That's great. They got a lot better in the portal this year. They should be fully healthy because they were not healthy at the tail end of last season. But when you look at what Fresno State can put together this season, they do not have a tough schedule at all. And again, all that matters is they win the Mountain West. I think this is the one game they lose this year. Truly, I think the rest of their non-conference games, Fresno State goes out and wins. I think they beat Washington State. Washington State has to go to Fresno State. I think they're going to lose that game. UCLA. I think Fresno State goes into Pasadena and beats UCLA. Sac State's a good test for them next week that they should win. But I think they're able to stay competitive with Michigan. This kind of feels like that, that game I was talking about with WKU and Alabama. I think Fresno State keeps this game kind of close. Michigan, again, lost a lot in the not in the portal, but just in the offseason, right? All their guys are gone. All of them went to the NFL for the most part. They had a huge senior class. Alex Orji's the starting quarterback in Michigan. Again, it's just, he feels like a really good fit for Michigan. Orji leaves I wouldn't say a lot, but a little bit to be desired in terms of throwing the football. He's no JJ McCarthy, right? Donovan Edwards is back. That's great. Obviously, he's good, but he's no Blake Corum. The team just is not as good. They lost Roman Wilson at receiver. I think they're still one of the better teams in the Big Ten. They're just not, like Washington, they are just not the same team that made the national championship last year. They will beat Fresno State, but they have a very tough game this week against the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs will keep this game close. They're going to lose it by about 14. I just don't know if Michigan's able to run it up against really any team. Like, they'll run it up against Arkansas State in a couple weeks, but especially against this Fresno State squad, I don't think they're able to run it up. So I think Fresno State's competitive in this game. I think Michigan wins, but Fresno State will stay around in this one. But I am very intrigued for this game in Ann Arbor this weekend. To the Sunday night game. USC goes on the road to Baton Rouge to take on the LSU Tigers. Fun game, it really is, right? Again, Caleb Williams is gone, obviously, for USC now. It's Moss now as the starting quarterback of this team. Miller Moss looked really good in the Holiday Bowl. I mean, again, it's been a small sample size for Miller Moss. I don't know why Jaden Maivia is here. I don't know, I just don't know why he would go from being the starter at UNLV last season. I don't know why he just didn't stay, but he was the starter at UNLV last year, had a pretty decent season, to going to backing up Miller Moss at USC. I don't understand the mindset for this one. Does Maivia think he's going to be the starter by his senior season? Maybe, but the thing is, USC is going to transfer someone good in anyways after Miller Moss has done these 2 years. So is Maivia even going to start in 2 seasons? I don't know. I don't know why Jaden Maivia would go from being the starter at UNLV to being the backup here for Lincoln Riley at USC. I don't understand what he's doing. I just don't get the mindset at all. Go start and go play college football. He could have started at not a lot of Power 5 schools, but he could have started somewhere in the Power 5. I don't know what he's doing. I think LSU, though, will beat USC. I think they will. USC was, again, very good start to the year last year. They just fell off as the season went. And they're not the same team they were last year. Caleb Williams was an X factor for them. And I like LSU a lot. This defense is going to be good for LSU this season. I think they are. They were a little shaky at points last season. Obviously, they weren't, the national title contender like they should have been last season, I think. They lost week 1 to Florida State against Jordan Travis. It is what it is. Florida State was a much better team last year than what the hell they are this year. And they lost 3 games last year. Florida State, Ole Miss, Alabama. 3 really good schools. I think they're able to bounce back. Obviously, again, James Daniels is gone, so it's fine. Daniels and Caleb Williams were the first 2 quarterbacks picked in the NFL draft last season. Both their teams are playing each other now. I think LSU, though, have better guys all around this team. Again, obviously USC and LSU are going to lose guys in the NFL draft every single season. I think LSU is just the better team. And in Baton Rouge, I think LSU goes and beats Southern Cal. I think LSU wins this game. They cover the 3.5 and they win outright. So LSU goes and takes this one on Sunday night. And to our final game of the entire slate, we are taking Boston College to cover against Florida State. I don't think Boston College is going to win. I don't think so. I don't think they're going to win this game. But I definitely don't think they're going to get killed. Okay? DJ Uyunglele. I hope he has a good game. Seriously, I hope he does. I hope he has a good game. But God, that Georgia Tech game, man, was just, I don't know. I don't even, honestly though, I think DJ Uyunglele he's getting too much hate. I think he is. Now, like, the whole thing about him needing a job or whatnot, I think he's getting a little too much hate. Mike Norvell called a horrible game against Georgia Tech. I don't understand why Florida State, Mike Norvell, or whoever was calling the plays, was it Alex Atkins? I don't know. I don't know who was calling the plays for Florida State. First down, you get 2 yards on the ground. Second down, you get 1 yard on the ground. Well, now you're backed up to 3rd and 7, and you're forcing a guy who, let's just be honest with ourselves, is not the best thrower of the football in DJ Uyunglele, and you're forcing him on a 3rd and long every single time. And it's just, the run game was working early in the game, but as the game went on, Georgia Tech adapted to it. They figured out the all-around run game of FSU. And obviously, Florida State didn't win the football game. That one drive at the end of the game, even when they scored, they waited till 3rd and 4th down to throw the football. They need to throw the ball. Again, if Florida State can open up the offense and throw the ball early in downs, early in drives, I think they're going to be a lot better. I just don't know if they fix that for week 2 here. I think they win. BC wasn't horrible last season, right? This is a team that won in the Fenway Bowl against SMU. SMU is a pretty solid school as well, right? And again, their game against Nevada last week, we're just going to throw that one out. But I don't think BC is very bad. I think this is a middle-of-the-pack ACC school that should be able to stay competitive with Florida State, and especially the team that we saw last week in Florida State, I don't think is able to beat anybody in the ACC by 16 other than maybe Stanford. I think Boston College stays competitive in this game. I don't think they're going to be able to win, but I think Boston College will have this game around tied at halftime, but then Florida State will start to pull away. I like FSU to win by about 2 touchdowns. Again, 16 just a lot. It's a lot of points, especially in an ACC matchup, and especially with the team of Florida State that just lost last week and didn't look all that impressive in their loss to Georgia Tech. I understand this game's in Tallahassee and it's not in Dublin, Ireland, but still, I think Boston College will cover, but I do think FSU will win the football game. So folks, that will do it for our week 1 college football predictions. We just predicted every single college football game. I did a little spiel about every single game too. I did not think this was going to take a whole hour, but it did. It will be a lot shorter next week considering a lot of these FBS schools are going to be playing each other instead of just random FCS schools. So again, the tune-up games are going to slowly start going away as the season progresses. But there you have it, every single college football game here in the week 1 slate. So if you did enjoy the video, folks, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like as well if you did enjoy. Make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back next week on Tuesday for every single week 2 college football game, along with on Wednesday, we will have our NFL predictions. On Sunday, we will have our UFC Fight Night Gilbert Burns versus Sean Brady predictions. And on Monday, we will have our Bellator predictions featuring Alexander Chablis and Usman Nurmagomedov in the main event. So be on the lookout for all these predictions here on the channel, folks. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. And Mamba, forever.